I'm Barry Weigel.
As I mentioned earlier in the show, Governor Cuomo announced that New York State was awarded a $1.6 billion loan from the federal government for construction of the new Tappan Zee Bridge. This is one of the largest loans in the history of the federal government for an infrastructure project. It will cover a little bit less than half of the overall cost of the bridge replacement, which is close to about $4 billion. And this project is a big one. It is very important for the Cuomo administration. A lot of people are going to be watching. Joining me now to talk more about the loan and what it means for the state is the president of the Associated General Contractors of New York, Mike Elmendorf. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good to be back.
So, yeah, we haven't seen you in a while. Okay, so what's interesting to me about this is just, it feels like within the last week, the governor was sort of managing expectations and saying we aimed high when we asked for 1.6 billion, 1.59, whatever it was, and we might not get it all, and then lo and behold, you know, here it is. Are you surprised that he got all of what he asked for?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think certainly it is a very significant development for this project, and as you note, for the governor, who has really sort of taken this on in a very direct way. And it is, I think, the biggest TIFIA loan that has been made in the history of the program. It's a lot of money, but it's a big project, it's an expensive project, and it's a really critically important project that's way overdue. Yeah,
I think the second most expensive one was $900 million in Texas, which is kind of, must give the governor a little bit of a sort of good feeling.
Not everything is bigger in Texas.
No,
apparently.
but also you have the governor of Texas, Rick Perry, was coming to New York and sort of like, you know, chiding the governor and making fun of our economic development, tax-free zones project, whatever you might think of them. And now it turns out that we're getting, you know, much more money than he did. So there you are. The project, though, I mean, this is just, it's a great day for the governor, it's a great day for the project, but it's only, you know, baby steps, right? I mean, from here, things get serious.
Well, no, I think they're already serious. I mean, you have an award that's been made, you have work that is starting. I go up and down about once a week on the train past there and watch what's happening in the river, and every time I go by, I see more activity. So this project is underway, and really the governor has put this thing on a fast track in a big way. And it's been talked about for, God, how long? I mean, we were talking about this when I was in state government.
Decades.
And, you know, the governor rightly said, look, we can talk about this forever or we can do something, because if you don't do something, eventually one day you're going to wake up and discover that you can't cross the Tappan Zee Bridge anymore. It's in that bad a shape.
Which would be a major problem for the economy.
It would be a huge blow, not just to New York's economy, but to the region's economy.
Right. So now, though, he has to deliver. I mean, if you get the money, right, there was some question as to what was going to happen. Would he get the money? Now there's a question of what's going to happen with the tolls. And we just don't know. You know, there's some cynical hypothesis that, you know, they won't go up until the governor's long gone, and so it won't matter. But, I mean, that's a big sort of question mark here.
I'm not sure that's possible. You know, there's a couple things. First, the project has already been going forward. You've got a consortium of some of the leading firms in the world with experience doing jobs like this. It's a design-build job, which is not new in America, but it's relatively new in New York, and it was a very significant win for the governor to get the authority to do that. And the Thruway Authority, this is their first design-build, so talk about starting big. One of the biggest projects in the country.
Well, yeah, and
DOT's been doing it, but I think it's going pretty well. And you've got folks, in terms of the contractors and the professionals on the job, that know what they're doing. Now, the toll piece is a different animal entirely, because now that, you know, sort of the TIFIA piece, the loan, federal loan piece, has been hanging out there. Now that they know what they're going to get, they know how much of the cost of the project that the Thruway Authority has to finance, and they can finish out a financial plan, not just for the bridge, but it affects the entirety of the Thruway, because as rickety and maintenance intensive as that bridge is, it puts a lot of revenue into the rest of the Thruway system, because it is a very highly traveled span of the Thruway.
Yeah.
So even though it costs every year more to keep that bridge functional, there's still a lot of money that has been coming off that bridge to help support the rest of the Thruway, which has growing needs. I mean, the Tappan Zee is one bridge, but the Thruway Authority has about 800 bridges in their system.
And their finances are not fantastic.
Their finances are not fantastic. Their needs are great, because like much of the rest of our infrastructure, the Thruway, even more so, it was built basically within a 5 or 6 year span. So everything is about the same age.
Okay, hold one second. I mean, if I remember correctly, my history on the Thruway, when we built the Thruway, there was this idea that tolls would only exist into such a time that, you know, we would pay off the cost of the thing, and then you would be able to drive it for free. That has not happened.
Yeah, that's a story I've heard a lot. I'm not really sure how that would work. I mean, nothing is free. if you want roads and bridges, if you want infrastructure, you need to pay for it. And the Thruway is a little bit unique because they are sustained nearly entirely by tolls. Now there's a little bit of a wrinkle there, a little bit of a change there, because there was some general fund support that was given to the Thruway in this last budget, which was a good thing. They took the cost of operating the state police on the Thruway off of the Thruway's books and into the general fund, did a couple of other things. But the Thruway Authority has to pay for itself through tolls. Nobody likes to talk about having higher tolls, but you have to look at what the needs of that system are and then figure out what it costs to pay for it and maintain it. You either pay now or you pay a lot more later, which is what's happened with the Tappan Zee.
Right. So the thing about the Tappan Zee is there's a lot of eyes on this thing. There is a lot riding on it for the governor. I mean, you noted it, and now for the Thruway Authority, they're sort of one and the same. We're talking about the same administration, obviously, even though an authority, technically speaking, is an independent entity. But you know, they are doing this design build project. It's the first that they've done. They're doing it in a big way, right, as you mentioned. The governor has this massive project. He says New York works, want to put everything back, you know, want to boost the economy. If this thing goes over budget, if it goes over time, I think the deadline is what, for 2018, I think is what we're looking for?
Yeah, I think the first span, I think, is supposed to be done in 2016, the second span the next year, and then the project is completed, I think, by 2018.
Right. If that goes over in any way, shape, or form, what does that mean for the administration?
Well, look, I think this project is going to be successful. You've got firms that, again, although this is new in New York and it's a big project, this is the world that they play in. If you look at the kind of companies that are part of the consortium that's doing this, the governor has a lot riding on this, and so you know that they're going to stay on top of it to make sure that it gets done.
Right.
And you've got a great team at the Thruway Authority, led by Tom Madison, who I know well. He was a colleague of mine.
Yes, in the Pataki administration.
In the Pataki administration, and he is one of the, of the people I worked with, was one of the most capable people I knew, who went on to become the Federal Highway Administrator. So you've got some of our best people on this. It's going to be a successful project. It's a big project, and it's a construction project. And folks who have redone their kitchen know when you start getting into a project, sometimes you have surprises.
Right.
It wouldn't surprise me if there were surprises once they got into this, but these guys know what they're doing, and I think it's going to be a success.
What does it mean for your folks, I mean, general contractors, I mean, for jobs, for the foreseeable future?
Yeah.
It's an economic development project. I mean, it is a boon, and in some ways a headache for the people who live there, and we understand, and a nightmare maybe for people who are trying to get across, and they're trying to minimize a lot of the impact, and yet jobs.
Sure. It's going to mean a lot of construction jobs, and we have many firms in our membership who are involved, directly or indirectly in the project. It's going to mean, hopefully a pretty significant manufacturing impact in terms of the materials that are going to go into the project. But I think we also have to look at it as a way to bring attention to the broader infrastructure needs that we have, because again, this is one of 800 bridges that the Thruway has.
Yep.
About 600 of them are going to be 60 years old. They are going to need to replace probably 10 to 15 bridges a year, and they've got to pay for it.
Yeah.
And the same is true for the DOT system and all of our infrastructure.
So
it's just fallen apart.
You bring up this interesting point, though, because is it better to do big project A? I mean, no one would say that the Tappan Zee was not in need of this. It was
this
actually
is not an
dangerous.
optional project.
I understand, but some of those other bridges are not optional either. I mean, is it better to do the huge, high-profile, bang for your buck, everybody's watching, and if you prove that you can do this, people are going to notice, versus 100 little projects that are going to impact perhaps a smaller number of people but are equally important?
I think you have to do both. I mean, because obviously if there was a failure at the Tappan Zee Bridge, if the bridge, best case scenario, if the bridge was closed, think about the level of disruption and disaster that would wreak on the region. It would be terrible. And God forbid if there was a failure, a structural failure of the bridge, because this is a bridge that it's fracture critical. So if there's a failure on one component of the bridge is coming down. And it's a very similar design to the bridge that failed in Minnesota not long ago, which I think helped sort of ramp up the focus and attention on replacing the bridge. But the answer is you have to do all of it. I mean, it's not like you have a choice to decide we're not going to maintain our infrastructure.
But we're not doing all of it.
Well, we need to do a better job. There's no question about it. And our hope is that when you have so much attention focused on this project, it brings people's attention to the broader issue of infrastructure. And I've been here and talked about this before.
Yes, you have.
When we had the ramp failure down at the Empire State Plaza, or when something goes wrong someplace else, everybody says, "Oh my God, we've got to do something about this," and then they move on to something else about 2 weeks later. We need a sustained focus on this, and we need at the state level. It's not a unique problem in New York, and at the federal level, a way to figure out how are we going to pay for what needs to be done. It has to be done. There's not a choice.
Okay, in closing then, are you getting signs from the Cuomo administration that there's recognition of that for 2014 and beyond?
Certainly, I think they understand it. And, the governor's already made some efforts in that direction with New York Works and other things. But, if you think about it, with New York Works, it was a great program. You had accelerated bridges, you had accelerated pavement program, and there was some significant spin-up of money that was spent sooner, really, than it would have been, as well as some new money.
Right.
But even after doing that, conditions still got worse. And people say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, yes, it does, because it just goes to show how great the needs are, because if you hadn't done that, you would have gone that much further backwards. So there's real serious need out there. The way we pay for it through the gas tax doesn't work anymore for a variety of reasons. It's a very inefficient tax, and too much of the money is not ending up where it needs to go. So we're working on a number of different ideas to really try to find some innovative approaches to pay for these things. We have to do it. The economy depends on it. Our communities depend on it. And any time that you just put it off, you're just making a problem worse and more expensive down the road.
So when you are ready to talk about those innovative ideas, I hope you'll come back.
I'll be happy to come back and talk about those.
Mike Elmendorf.
Thank you.